I Like Me Better by LeilahMoon, read by LMX Mabella. Chapter 9. By the time Hermione arrived back at Hogwarts, she was buzzing with excitement to see her friends and recommence lessons. Despite having a wonderful Christmas with her parents, she had missed everything to do with the wizarding world, and even irregular hours she received did little to soothe the ache she felt. Hermione found Harry and Ron lounging on the comfortable common room sofa as she hurriedly made her way inside the portrait hall. They both grinned up at her as she flopped down between them. In an attempt to maintain some semblance of manners, she briefly inquired about their holidays before asking what she really wanted to know. "So, did you find out who Nicholas Flamel was?" The boys rolled their eyes in mock exacerbation at her eagerness for knowledge, but Harry shook his head and said no. Instead, he told her about the Mirror of Her Eyes. Why would they keep something like that in a school? And his newly gifted invisibility cloak. Can I see? I'd love to do some research on it. They continued to talk for the next hour before Hermione insisted they all go to bed. It is the first day of term tomorrow, after all. We really need to be ready to learn as well as putting more research hours in, I think. As she stood, Hermione accidentally caught one of the chocolate frog cards Harry and Ron had been comparing on the table, and it fell to the floor. Harry bent to pick it up and gasped. "I found him," he whispered, gazing at the picture of Professor Dumbledore in his hand. Pausing from the staircase, Hermione asked, "Found what?" "Flamel!" Ron exclaimed as he leaned over Harry's shoulder. "You told us you had seen his name somewhere, mate." "Listen to this," Harry said. "Professor Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the Dark Wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner, Nicholas Flamel." "Stay there!" Hermione yelped and sprinted up to her dormitory. Harry and Ron barely had time to exchange surprised looks before she was racing back, an enormous old book in her arms. "I never thought to look in there," she muttered, flicking fervently through the pages. "A little light reading," Ron chuckled sarcastically. Hermione waved her hand impatiently in front of his face, as she at least found what she was looking for. "Nicholas Flamel," she breathed, "is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone." She was frustrated at the lack of response her dramatic statement had made on the boys, but she pushed the book into their laps for them to read. "See," said Hermione when Harry and Ron had finished. "The dog must be guarding Flamel's Philosopher's Stone. I bet he asked Dumbledore to keep it safe for him because they're friends and he knew someone was after it." "A stone that makes gold and stops you ever dying," said Hermione. "No wonder Snape's after it. Anyone would want it." The trio continued to engage in excited conversation until they were yawning more than talking and finally went to bed. The weeks passed quickly by in a haze of research and homework. Walking towards Charms with Harry, Ron, and Neville one blustery day, Hermione was disappointed that she had yet to spend much time with Draco. So when she saw him leaning elegantly against the wall by their classroom, she wasn't able to conceal her sudden grin. There was no time to consider whether anyone had noticed her faux pas. However, Ascap and Goyle immediately took a step towards them, the latter clicking his knuckles. Draco sighed internally. He was frustrated that his first proper encounter with Hermione after their separation was going to be this way. On the other hand, he was ready to assert his dominance over her Gryffindor idiots. Malfoys did not share, and Draco particularly hating having to share his friend with them. Smirking, Draco pulled himself from the wall and walked towards the four. "Surprised to hear you're going ahead with the Quidditch match tomorrow, Potter. Wonder how long you're going to stay on the broom this time?" Harry scowled and strode towards him, closely followed by Ron. Hermione pinched the bridge of her nose and prayed for strength. Draco continued. "You know how I think they choose people for the Gryffindor's team? It's people they feel sorry for. See, there's you, Potter, who's got no parents, and then there's the Weasleys, who've got no money." He looked over at Neville. "You should be on the team, Longbottom. You've got no brains." "Shut it, Malfoy!" Ron snarled as he and Harry went to grab their wands. Neville attempted to do the same, somehow managed to become entangled in his ropes. They twisted around him as he struggled to free himself, and he fell, almost comically, to the floor. Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle howled with laughter before moving back to the wall as they heard Professor Flitwick hurrying around the corner. "Oh, Granger," Draco called over his shoulder as he entered the classroom. "I'm shocked you're not in the library. Will you be sleeping with the books tonight?" I imagine they've missed you and that bushy head of yours. He hoped she got the message. Chapter 10. Bushy head! She shouted, storming over to Draco that evening. He looked up at her and smiled innocently. He had initially entertained concerns that the comment was too much. However, upon seeing her like this, he realized how much fun it was to wind her up. "Good evening, Granger," he said. "How lovely to see you received my message." Hermione rolled her eyes and took her usual seat next to him. "My hair isn't bushy, it's textured." Draco snorted primly. "It looks like you have housed a Kniesel in there for at least the past 7 years. It's a mess. I'm shocked you can hold your head up straight." He was lying, of course. Draco found her hair surprisingly endearing, not that he would ever admit it. He liked that Hermione didn't succumb to the pressure other girls did to change their appearance. The smell of Sleek Easy's hair potion often wafted around the Slytherin dungeon, and Draco shivered at the thought. He much preferred vanilla. As she yanked the books and parchment from her satchel, Hermione muttered, "At least my face isn't sharp enough to cut steel." Draco stroked his chin wryly. "They are aristocratic features, very highly regarded." Hermione leaned over to him to grab one of his quills and pretended to cut her arm across his nose. She squealed realistically, but couldn't maintain the pretense and burst into laughter while Draco pouted next to her. Settling down, the two updated each other with their news. Hermione already had told Draco about Hagrid and Fluffy, but not Nicholas Flamel. "I really don't think that Snape would be looking for the Philosopher's Stone," Draco mused. "Who did you say gave Hagrid the egg again?" He wasn't sure. Someone he was playing cards with at a Leaky Cauldron. "Don't you think it's a bit odd," he responded, "that, from what you've said, something Hagrid wants more than anything else is a dragon, and a stranger just turns up who happens to have an egg in his pocket?" Hermione gasped and put her hand over her mouth. "Why didn't I see it before? How many people are going to wander around with dragon eggs when it's against wizard laws?" "The question is then, what did this card player get from Hagrid in return?" "Hagrid isn't very good at keeping secrets." "And does he like to brag about his pet monsters?" Scowling, she said. He's very passionate, yes, but—" Hermione broke off, eyes wide. "Do you think he told a stranger something about Fluffy?" "I wouldn't be surprised." "Oh, what a mess! At least Dumbledore's around. He wouldn't let the stone be stolen from right under his nose." Hermione," Draco paused. "He's been called to the Ministry of Magic. I overheard Professor McGonagall earlier today." She blanched. Frantically packing her belongings away, Hermione apologized to Draco, explaining that she had to go and find Harry and Ron immediately. Running from him towards the library exit, Draco wasn't sure why he felt his stomach drop as he lost sight of her. Hermione burst through the fat lady's portrait, much to the latter's chagrin. "Watch where you are going, young lady!" and was relieved to find Harry and Ron in their usual positions by the fire. Breathlessly, she told them everything she now believed about the stain, obviously leaving out any mention of Draco. "It's tonight," said Harry at once. "Snape's going to go through the trapdoor tonight. He's found out everything he needs to know, and now he's got Dumbledore out of the way. He sent that note. I bet the Ministry will get a real shock when Dumbledore turns up." Hermione wanted to tell Harry that she and Draco didn't believe that Snape was the one looking to steal a stone, but held her tongue. They eventually agreed that the only course of action was to use the invisibility cloak and attempt to retrieve the stone before the thief. Hermione was deeply unhappy with this plan. However, equally, she was not going to let two of her best friends enter such a dangerous situation without her. "We'll go tonight, then," she said determinedly, "when everyone is in bed." To be continued. Thank you for listening to today's chapters of I Like Me Better by LeilahMoon. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, AO3, or Tumblr.